Good evening, Bernard. How are you?
I'm doing great. And yourself?
Well, I'm about to drink some pretty delicious Burgundy, so could be worse. Of course, I wish I was drinking this with you in person, but
Yes. You could have tasted the food I prepared for that event.
oh, now this is just torturing me because one of the things I love about coming to taste with you is that not only do I get to taste the most amazing wines, but you always cook for us too.
Yeah, because I love cooking. Look at the big man.
Someone someone was saying today that we should all make a pact that everyone has to gain 15 pounds during shelter in place, so that at the end, it's like nobody gained any weight. We're all just
Well, I,
15 pounds heavier.
well, I hope I will stay under 15.
Yeah, you and me both. But
If, if, especially if he likes the old months of May and then April and maybe May, it's gonna be difficult. But,
wow,
we have to do it for the best, so
yeah.
we'll be
Well,
ready.
at least we'll be drinking well. So for those of you just joining, I'm with Bernard Retornaz, president of Louis Latour. I'm going to give people just a few minutes to log on and join us, but in the meantime, I'm going to pour myself a glass of Merceau. So we are going to taste four wines. Okay, I'm kind of busted, like I actually already had some in my glass, but I'm going to pour some more Merceau into my glass, which I know, Bernard, you have actually prepared something that you're going to show us later. And the recipe will be posted on the Wine Access Experience Facebook page. So in case you would like to try your hand at this at home, this will be posted later. So, well, Bernard, so if I can, we did an event together about a month ago, right?
Yep. Yeah.
And I had
Great
so much
event.
I had so much fun. It's so great to be reunited with you.
Thank you.
And I'd love to just give a little, introduction to Maison Louis Latour and also a little bit about you. But, Maison Louis Latour has been a mainstay in France for, what, 3 centuries? Survived the French Revolution and 2 world wars. And since their first purchase of vines, the domain has grown to 125 acres. And actually, if I'm correct, is the largest holder of Grand Cru vineyards in all of Burgundy.
That's correct.
Is that accurate?
Yes. Yes, we own
Wow.
67 acres of Grand Cru, mostly in the Cote de Beaune. And the two Grand Cru we own in the Côte de Nuit is Romanée Saint-Vivant and Chambertin Cuvée Héritier Latour.
Fantastic. Well, thank you for joining us. It's truly an honor. And Bernard himself, as I mentioned, he's president of Louis Latour. Started his career in Burgundy with J.C. Boisset and has been president since 1991 of Louis Latour. So a true expert in all of the wines that we're talking about tonight, but also about Burgundy in general. And for any of you at home just joining, I'm Vanessa Conlin. I'm the head of wine for Wine Access. And we are going to have a little conversation about Burgundy and taste some wines and just have some fun. And this is meant to be interactive. So any questions that you'd like to ask us, please post on the Wine Access Experience and we will answer them later on tonight. So we're starting here with Merceau. So the 2016 Merceau Geneviève Premier Cru. So Bernard, I'm curious, there are no Grand Cru vineyards in Merceau.
No, no,
Do you
there is
think
no Grand Cru. There
do
is
you think
some
that
of
there
them.
should be?
There is some of them which should deserve the Grand Cru, but I think at that time it will be too many. It's all the Merceau Premier Cru which are in the middle of the hill. And when you go towards Puligny, some of them should have. But on the other hand, I'm glad they don't have because they are more affordable, and it's good for the consumer, good for us. And the Merceau Geneviève is the second largest Premier Cru. The largest Premier Cru in Merceau is Les Charmes, and Geneviève is around 41 acres. So it's a nice plot of land. We don't own anything because the only whites we own, it's with the largest owner, Corton Charlemagne, and we own Chevalier Montrachet les Demoiselles. Most of the whites we use or we make from the Cote de Beaune or the Cote de Nuit from grapes or must than we have under contract. So it's all contract. We want to have control of the winemaking. We make our own barrels, so we want to use our barrels. So that's the reason every wine from the négociant side is made from grapes or must than we purchase.
I see. Well, and you actually set up my next question because you mentioned location of mid-slope. And so I wanted to know, can you break down for us, why is that important and why are so many Grand Cru vineyards on the middle of a slope in Burgundy?
Well, first of all, you know, all the slope is facing east. So that means if you're in the middle of the slope, you're going to get, you know, the sun from early in the morning until late in the afternoon. If you were at the bottom of the slope, that's where if there is humidity or rain, the water stay. And it gets the sun much later when it started to be 10 o'clock. So the fact you are in the middle of the hill, sun exposure is the best. And also the soil is much richer. You have a lot of, especially in Mercer, a lot of limestone, great clay. So that gives you the power of what you can taste in the Mercer Genevois. It's one of my favorite with Boucher.
It's delicious. There's something about the acidity in white Burgundy that I describe as being nervous, where there's sort of this crackle of excitement on the palate that, you know, this wine, it certainly has some lushness, it has some breadth, but it also just has this like beautiful, tense, like tautness on the palate that is just really fascinating.
Yeah, which go great with food. You know, I always say that the whole world make wine to go with food and the acidity, you know, on the dish I prepare, which is as Gruyere and creme fraiche, so it's a little bit of rich dish. That acidity, it's wonderful. It's really balanced in your mouth, and that's what I like. But yeah, the Mercer Pliny. And Mercer is always fatter. You know, we have the 16 vintage, so the 16 was a very small year, 35% below normal because of the flour, which was tough. So small yield. And at that time, you have a very powerful wine. So 16 for me, it's a great, great vintage. We've been blessed lately by having great vintage in Burgundy, small because of weather. So that means more power, great acidity. So really wine that you can put on the side. Yeah.
Well, and I think you mentioned one of the markers that I get for Mercer. For instance, when I was studying for the MW exam, if I thought it was white Burgundy and I was trying to figure out where it was from, I always found there was sort of like there's a breadth, there's a richness to Mercer. In spite of that, like that beautiful acidity, it's different than, you know, just neighboring Pouligny, which has a much more sort of linear palate feel. This to me has a much sort of like more spherical feel on the palate, and it's delicious. And now you've kind of gotten me curious about what you paired with this. So what did you cook?
My favorite dish was that it's a rabbit braised in a mustard sauce. So that's one of my favorite dish to go with Mercer because you have the fatness. You know, that melted butter, which is so typical of Mercer, you can recognize. Mm-hmm. So you need a kind of a rich dish. But, you know, and I think some French are going to be crazy about it, but I love this one also with triple cream cheese. You know, this rich cheese. I think white wine go better with cheese than red wine. A few French going to kill me, but that doesn't matter.
That's so something. Sorry, go ahead.
No. So the dish I prepare, you know, and it's too bad we're not going to be able to share. It's on a piece of a ham. You know, I'm going to show you a little bit if we can see it. Yeah.
Oh wow.
I don't know. Do you see it?
Yes, it looks delicious. So ham.
So it's a slice of ham with creme fraiche and Gruyere. And after that, I put the endive or the leek and I roll. And that's the finish roll. And after that, you put that in a baking dish with a little bit more Gruyere on the top. And that's what it is.
Wow.
Do you see it? Here we go.
Yes, I see it. You're torturing me, but yes, I see it.
So it looks like it's going to be my dinner.
Wow. Wow. I think that also would go well with our next wine, right? Which
Yes.
is the 17 Pierre Doré Pinot Noir. And I think this is a newer project for you. Is that correct?
Yes, so, as I mentioned, you mentioned, it's still family owned. We're 223 years old. The company was created 1797. We have the 11th generation running the company. And each generation did something. So the father, Louis Fabrice, who is the president and CEO right now, started to go south in the Ardeche to plant Chardonnay because we were limited in France and we went in Burgundy. I wanted to use the grape varietal. And Louis Fabrice decided to go south of Beaujolais and plant Pinot Noir in Les Pierres Dorées area. So it's the further south of the Beaujolais you can be, just north of Lyon. And we have now 25 acres planted. The vine is very young, 7 years old vine. So the wine, it's moving. And I remember we tasted, I think, the 15 and the 16 with you.
Yeah.
That was our two first commercial vintage. And you were, yeah. And after that, you taste the 17, which is our third commercial vintage. And you can see the wine evolving, getting better. The vine are getting older. We know better what to do. But that's a new project, and we're very excited about that because we can plant more. The only problem we have is fighting the French administration to get the Burgundy appellation. Right now, we just Cote de Beaune, which is one of these crazy new appellations that the government came with it. But we hope that one day to have the Burgundy appellation. But on the other hand, it's not a big deal. Pinot Noir, Les Pierres Dorées is the location. It's Louis Latour, and we're doing extremely well. I'm very excited about that one.
It's delicious. I like your impression of me also. But so then I have a question based on what you were just talking about, because there are a lot of laws that apply to wine in the EU that we don't have to adhere to in Napa. So do you think that that's fair, or do you think that some laws, let's say in Burgundy, should be relaxed a little bit?
Well, I think, it's fair because otherwise it will be like we call the Far West. Anybody could do anything and blend. And, there is a history, there is location which have been set, centuries ago. It's very interesting. We have a map at the office, and I show you, I think is in the conference room where we meet, which is from the early 1700s. And it was just by color, and already those days they knew which vineyard were the best, and they were just doing by color. So there is a past, there is an history. So I'm glad then we have this law. I'm glad we have law where we cannot irrigate. I think that's a big difference between the old and the new world. The irrigation, it's forbidden in all the appellation contrôlées where we are. So it's really dry farming, and you get the fruit that the year gives you. So it's quite interesting. So yes, I like the laws, but it's always, there is some which are against, some which are for. I'm for the law and the control. If it's government, it will be another thing. But I think keep everybody on their toes, and I think it's good.
Okay. Well, I also I wanted to mention that I think you're breaking the internet with your food because people are going crazy for your. So thank you. I'm going to pour the next wine while I ask you my next question, and then we can talk about the wine. But so there's so much that we know about wine and winemaking and land and viticulture and everything that goes into a bottle of wine. but there's something sometimes that I just describe as magical. You can't trace back to something specific that the winemaker did. So I'm just curious. So in Burgundy, like how much do you think is just pure terroir, site, and how much do you think is just inexplicable magic?
Well, magic and terroir for me will be very close to each other. But, I will say, let's put it that way. I will say the wine comes 20% from the winemaker. The rest is from the terroir and the location where Burgundy is located. Winemaker can make great wine if they are great fruits. If the fruits are terrible, the wine's going to be terrible. So we always forget that, that the number one is the quality of the fruit. And I think we're blessed in Burgundy with this terroir and this soil composition, which are quite unbelievable, which give you that magic in the wine. So I think it's the terroir give you that magic. After that, the winemaker is just a bearer of bringing those fruit in a bottle. But, that's where you start.
I think it's interesting that in the United States, often the winemaker is the most famous, associated with a wine. Where in Burgundy, it's like it's the appellation or the vineyard, or that's the star behind it, not the actual winemaker.
Yeah, I think what you have to look in Burgundy is first of all is the vintage, because compared to Napa, every year they make they have a great vintage. In France, we have variation years to years, and I think that's what you have to look. And after that, you look for the house style, and you have this house which have different style, and if you like the style of a house, you stick to it. And the well-known will always produce the best wine they can in that year. It's really not the winemaker which make the wine. And it's a matter of fact, have you heard the name of our winemaker? No, because we don't take him out. He should be in the winery making wine. But he has been with us for almost, he started a year before me. So he has been there for over 30 years.
Wow.
And Jean-Charles Thomas, he was for 10 years with Jean-Pierre Jobard from the Jobard family, which was with us for many years. And nobody knows him because, we don't have them traveling. We make 135 different wines, so he needs to take care of it. And we have two winemakers. Matter of fact, we have a lady, and she has a great palate. I think
they say women have better palates than men. Sorry, but
I'm agree with you on that one.
So I have this in my glass. So we're tasting the 2016 Corton Grand Cru. Can you tell us a little bit about Corton?
Yes. So Corton is the largest Grand Cru in Burgundy. And it's not only the largest red Grand Cru, but it's also the largest white Grand Cru. It's also the only hill which is not only facing east, but facing southeast, always to the west, when you go towards Pernon-Vergelès. So, for instance, if we talk about Corton Charlemagne, function where you're on the hill, you might do different style of wine. Function to east, south, or completely west. When most of the red are facing east and southeast. So, and Corton Grancey, it's when we purchased the estate from the Comte de Grancey just after the phylloxera, we were able to keep that monopoly and call Chateau Corton Grancey. There is a chateau, there is a living quarter, and that's where the winery is. And it's a blend of 4 different vineyards that we own in Corton, which are around the Cuvery. And it's made only in a good year. So it's mostly Bressan, Perrières, Clos du Roi, and Chaume. So that's the 4 vineyards which go in Corton Grancey. The percentage of each of those vineyards can change, but it's made only in a good year. And we were lucky because lately we have been having so many good years that we have made Corton Grancey almost every year for the past 8 years. But for instance, we didn't make any in 11, we didn't make any in 14, so there is a few vintage which we do not make, and at that time everything go to the domaine Latour, which is the second label.
This might be a little controversial, but do you think that climate change has actually benefited Burgundy in some ways?
Yes, yes. I think, we realized, look at, if you go even further north or east, Jura has never made so many great wine. I think Chablis has been making even better wine. So I think global warming, is a factor. I think it's getting warmer every year. We harvest earlier every year. I remember when I started as an old man, it was, the harvest was always beginning of October. So now it's mid-September. In 16, we started that all the way at the beginning of September. So it is. So which allowed us to have, I think better vintage. We harvest earlier, so we less factor of rain, being damaged by rain. So that's, I think global warming has an effect on Burgundy.
And stylistically too, because of ripeness, do you think that has sort of broadened the audience for Burgundy?
Well, yes, because because it's getting warmer, so we get more power. A little bit darker color. But we have never been known to make very dark Burgundy at Maison Latour. It's the style. We look for the finesse, the elegance of the Pinot. So we do fermentation of 15 days max. We try to capture that elegance of Pinot, but as you can see, the wine has guts. It has a great, body, and we do a very, very light wood treatment. We make our own barrels. All the barrels are toasted medium. That means 30 minutes, and we don't extend the aging in barrels. We usually, for instance, in the case of Cote de Beaune, is between 10 to 14 months, function of the vintage. But we never stayed 2 years in oak barrel. And in that case, in Cote de Beaune, we were in the 15, around 50% new oak.
And how usual or unusual is it in Burgundy to actually have your own cooperage?
Very unusual. Very unusual. I think we're the only one. There is some other house which, choose their wood and make the barrel by some other people, but we have from A to Z, we have our own barrel making. As a matter of fact, we sell barrel to some great California winery. Biggest customers, Peter Michael, Farniente, Pizzoli. So yeah, we sell roughly around 1,200 barrels to California wineries, so I know the wine very well here, and I always bring back to friends like that, the winemaker, can taste.
Yeah. Wow. Well, this wine is gorgeous. It's so perfumed, and it's just, I've only had it in my glass. I didn't pre-pour, or I didn't decant or pre-pour these until just right now as we're tasting. And just during our conversation, it's become even more expressive. It's really ethereal.
Yeah, on this young vintage, 15, 16, I will decant just before serving to let it breathe a little bit. And you can see that after a while in the glass, the wine. I have my wife sneaking in because she wants some of the wines.
Smart lady. Yeah.
Yeah, she's lucky today. She's going to drink very well today. We're going to drink very well today.
Got it. So I do have one question that came up on Facebook, and is that, do you have a favorite vintage of Corton Grand Cru, and if so, why?
It's hard to say, but I think my favorite vintage will be, I have two favorite vintage, 1990 and 2010. Because I get, the luck of tasting the wine on a regular basis, so I can see the evolution. And I think 15, 16 can be of that caliber. I think 16 is a little bit more powerful than 15. The reason is because the yield were much smaller. So there were more concentration in the fruit, and I think you get more power in the 16. But 16, 15 are two beautiful vintage in red, and especially 15. 15, I think, is a real classic red Burgundy vintage.
I love it. So I have our fourth wine, which I'm very excited about. So it's the 15 vintage Corton Clos du Roi Grand Cru. So tell us about this wine, about Clos du Roi.
So Clos du Roi is really a vineyard facing only east. So that means it's in the northern part of the town, very close to Ladois, which is the next village. And Clos du Roi, it's because the land used to be owned by one of the king of France, and they built a wall around. So that's the reason it's called Clos. Clos means a wall around a property, and the Roi because the one of the king of France used to own. So here you have I think a more masculine, I will call that Corton, because facing only east compared to Corton Grancey, where some of the vineyard which go in Corton Grancey facing south. So it's more masculine and more bud, more guts. I think more nervosity, more maybe a little bit more acidity, and it's a 15. So it's great because you can see the difference between 15 and 16. You know, we're talking same area, soil very similar, even if there is more limestone in the Clos du Roi than the other vineyard which go in the Corton Grancey. But you can see the vintage 15, which is an absolutely gorgeous vintage, and wine which can age. It's almost a shame to drink that right now, but I don't mind.
I'm not complaining, but I agree with you. I mean, this has so many years ahead. It's so just perfectly balanced and harmonious, and it has a real power and depth, but still this like beautiful delicacy as well. And the finish is just incredible.
Yeah, it stays in your mouth, you know, for a long time. You can almost want to chew a little bit, but you know, this one with a nice leg of lamb, you know, simply rose with herbe de Provence on the top, with a little gratin dauphinois, and there we go. I'm staying at the table for hours.
So, okay, well, we know that you actually cooked some pairings and you've mentioned some other pairings. Is there anything like totally out there, like in terms of unexpected Burgundy pairing that you like to do?
Barbecue salmon with Pinot Noir. I love it.
Yes.
You know,
Yeah.
I think the salmon, the richness, the fatness of the salmon on the barbecue with a great Pinot Noir, with one of these great wine, with, you know, to be healthy with a little tabbouleh or, you know, quinoa on the side, it will go very well with that. You know, I think, you know, in one way, it's always, you know, whatever you like, you know, there is nothing forbidden. And, you know, when I arrived in the States, everybody wanted to do cheese with red wine. And I say, no, you know, I think, and every time I do a dinner, I serve, you know, a white Burgundy. You have to have something rich, you know, and powerful to go with cheese. But, you know, Sauvignon Blanc with good cheese goes very well. You know, so I think it's what people like, and nothing is forbidden. But yeah, a grilled salmon, barbecue grilled salmon on a plank, on a cedar plank, and you have that wine, it's perfect.
So something I learned about you recently is aside from wine or from Burgundy, you actually are a fan of sake.
Yes, I love sake. At 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 the at the dislike of my bank account, but I love sake. Yeah, it's true, and you know we have that agreement that we after that you know issue is over, we have to go to Sushi Ran in Sausalito. It's one of my favorite, and he has a great sake list. Great place.
Honestly, that can't come soon enough. So, okay, we have another question. Let's see. If you were locked up for a month with access to only one Louis Latour Burgundy wine, which one would you choose and why?
Oh my God. You know, if I'm locked for a month and I need to have wine every day, we have a wine which is a Montagnier Premier Cru La Grande Roche white, which I think is one of these great value and affordable. You know, it retail for less than $30. And it's a Premier Cru, so it has some more guts than a village. And in the red, I love, there is one of my favorite wines from the domain, it's the Beaune Premier Cru Villefranche, which is very close to Beaune Clos des Mouches, which everybody knows. That's one of my favorite. As a matter of fact, when I started with Latour, I choose that wine because it came up one of the tasting when I started in 91. I say, oh, that's wine. And I get a big allocation because I love that wine.
You've got it figured out.
That would be the two wine that I will take.
Got it. So I have a question just for you personally. So if you weren't in the wine business, what would you do?
You know, I wanted to be a chef. Well, first of all, I'm an electronic engineer by trade, but I hate it. And I always wanted and loved food and wine, and that comes from my grandma, from my mom, which were a great cook. And, you know, they say, don't go into cooking, you're going to spend hours. But I think I would love to have a restaurant. I think that's what I would do because I love food. I love food. I'm the one cooking. My wife is a great cook, but I love, and it takes my mind away from the business. So that's the reason I also like to cook.
I would have suggested that for you, even if you hadn't said it, based on what you've cooked that I've had.
And you know, it's funny because at the beginning I say, oh, we're gonna cook, we're gonna cook. And yesterday, my daughter went shopping for us, you know, and she brought these beautiful, you know, small leeks, and where the white is was large, not too much green. And I said, and last night I say, oh, maybe I'm gonna cook something, and I came up with that recipe, which was my mom's recipe, because it was it's really an easy recipe. You know, you will see it's going to be posted. And I said it can go as well with red as well with white, so why not doing that? But yeah. You know, I love to cook every time. You know, every time you come to the office, it's a pleasure cooking for you. And I love to see people enjoying it, you know.
Well, it's hard not to when you're cooking. So speaking of your recipe, I think for anyone that joined late, maybe just a quick view again of how delicious it is and how beautifully you've plated it, if you don't mind showing.
Now, so that's the way that... Okay, I gotta do. There you go.
There you go.
So that's the way we do it. We have so in that case, I got French ham at Scotty's, our little market down there. And it's a French ham, and I put creme fraiche on the bottom of the ham. And after that, I put some Gruyere, salt, pepper, and half of the leek, and I roll that, like you can see here. And after that, I put it in a baking dish. And I put it in the oven at 350 for, you know, roughly 30, 40 minutes. And at the end, I put it on the broiler to, you know, gratinate, you know, the cheese on the top. So if you're on diet, I don't think it's the best dish. But if you have this kind of wine, forget the diet.
I totally agree. Well, we're close to the end of our time, but one last question, and that's just is there something that you really wish that people knew about either Maison Louis Latour personally or about Burgundy in general that you think that you know that is still a secret?
Well, you know, if you look at all these big and well-known house, can be us, Drouin, you know, Shadow, all of these people started as a grower. And most of them are very large holding in Burgundy. So, and you can see every successful grower become a negociant. And I don't want, you know, what I don't like is that bad word and that people have about negociant. You know, they think it's people buying finished wine blended. There is the good one and the bad one. But I think when you have this name, which have been in the business for a long time, and do only one brand, because we have only one brand, it's Louis Latour. What we kind of put in the market is the best we can do in that vintage. So that you know, name négociant has a bad connotation in America, which shouldn't. You know, we've been in business for 223 years. If we're making bad wine, we'll not be there. I think you have to choose the style of the house you like, and you stick to it. You know, it's reliable. We sell around 88 different countries. The U.S. is our largest market. We are roughly 28% come to the U.S. market of our production, and we do. You know, we are our own importer. We don't go to a national importer, so like that, we know exactly what's going on in the market. And so négociants are the heart of Burgundy, and they will always exist because you have to remember the size of the estate in Burgundy is so small. The average is 12 acres. So that means there is people owning only 2 or 3. What they're going to do? They rather sell their fruit to people like us. First of all, they get paid faster, and they don't have to, you know, because 9 months after they get paid in full, which usually take a year and a half before you start selling your wine. So there is a lot of people which need négociants because they don't have the mean and the power to go and sell their wine. So it's the bad name of the négociant in Burgundy. I hope that one day that will change.
Yeah. Oh, we just got a question online, which is, what's the most underrated Louis Latour wines that you think Americans should try?
The Grand Ardeche. And it's not a Burgundy. So, but you know, I think when you go to Maison Louis has unbelievable wine. And when you look over the years, those wines always stay in the same price. I remember when I started, it was $15 retail. Now it's 17, 30 years after. Price have been very stable and wine has been outstanding. I think, you know, the young generation in charge of all these new houses and domain have been doing a tremendous job by improving the quality of the wine and really working very hard, you know, to make better wine. And I think we never made so better wine in Burgundy than these days.
And one more question before we go that came in on Facebook is, what wines would you suggest for every day for those who can't afford the higher end?
Well, you know, we like we say, there is low. We always think of Burgundy, you know, being very expensive and, you know, fetching like the $60, $70, $80. But you have a lot of lesser appellation, which are unbelievable. For instance, you know, Marsanais, which is the first village south of Dijon, great introduction to the Cote de Nuit red, you know, which retail around $28. You have some Chauvet-les-Beaunes, some Santenay. But, you know, and after that, you can go to the Macon, to the Côte Chalonnaise, you know, Montagny, Rully, Givry. And after that, you have the lesser appellation, you know, Auxey-Durès, which is next to Mercer, but is roughly 30 or 40% less than Mercer. So the beauty in Burgundy, the offering is so large, then you can always find, you know, some great alternative to this expensive appellation. So, you know, there is great one in Marange, in Santenay, in Chauvet-les-Beaunes. So there is always. And don't forget the Côte Chalonnaise. I think Côte Chalonnaise makes some great wine.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we have one more question. How does Louis Latour decide what wines go into, for example, the Puligny Montrachet, and which wines get single vineyard designate?
Well, you know, when we have a contract, for instance, with a Premier Cru, we have to label Premier Cru. So now sometimes, you know, we might have a contract with 2 Premier Cru, but small contracts. So at that time, we might blend it. We do that less and less, but you can see sometimes, you know, for instance, Puligny Montrachet Premier Cru, that time it will be the blend of 2 or 3 different Premier Cru. But we have, you know, we have to respect the appellation contrôlée. And if the fruit comes from a Puligny site, which is called Folatière, you label Les Folatières because that's where the grapes come from. So again, it's the rule. Now, if you want, you can declassify that in Puligny, but you will not sell at the same price than Les Folatières, which is a very small plot of land. It's like the Mercer Genévrier is 40 acres. But we have many different owners. In our case, we produce around 400 cases of Puligny, of Mercer Genévrier, but that's it. So that's what it is. We cannot change the rule. And I'm glad there is like that, the people know what they're getting and where the fruit comes from.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Bernard, this has been a pleasure. I'm sorry that we're not, face to face, and that I'm not partaking in your delicious meal that you've made, but I look forward to the next time that we actually share a bottle and a meal together.
I cannot wait.
Me too. And for anyone at home, if you have any questions, following this, feel free to ask them, and we'll get back to you. And also, the recipe, courtesy of Bernard, is posted or will be posted, so you can also try your handiwork at home. I've just poured myself another splash of the Mercer. And Bernard, thanks again, and cheers, and until we meet again. Cheers.
And stay safe, please.
Stay safe.
Thank you for having me. Thank you for having me.
It's a pleasure. Bye-bye, Bernard.
Bye-bye.